We've all seen lions, tigers, and bears, but most people have not visible an animal that includes none of all three. It is honestly feasible for positive animal species to be interbred and procreate abnormal-looking hybrid animals. These days, we will be taking a look at 15 of the maximum horrifying hybrid animals. Number 15. Liger. Whilst we were all giggling as Napoleon Dynamite became drawing photographs of the mythical Liger in his pocketbook, scientists had been guffawing at us due to the fact the Liger is very actual. It is one of the maximum 9 F3 374 58 89 date 1 F 10,256 5 hybrids to exist, but don't expect to look one on the hunt within the savannah. This artificially created beast best exists in the zoos and sanctuaries that have birthed them, and as the call could propose, they're the mate of a male lion mating with a girl tiger. But the kicker right here is that those animals become much larger than either in their parents, and while this will sound cool to us, it is surely pretty unfortunate for the Ligers they be afflicted by a bout of gigantism, which causes them to weigh round 1,200 pounds, which is way an excessive amount for their frame to even try and help. So the percentages of seeing one walking round, even in an enclosure, are slender to none. So at the same time as on paper, the idea of a Liger is exquisite. They live extremely of a sad existence due to the fact they may be so overweight. It is an excessive amount for their body organs and heart to take maximum of them die at a young age, but the Ligers are fertile, and even though uncommon, they are able to mate with other Ligers, tigers, and lions. However, that offspring appears even scarier than the Liger itself. Number 14. Jaglion. Lions are horrifying sufficient in their own right, and so the thought of mixing them with a jaguar is downright terrifying. Each of those animals are on the pinnacle of the meal's chain and stalk their prey before stepping into for the kill, and whilst you combine those two apex predators, you get the Jaglion, fabricated from an exceptionally selective breeding device. The Jaglion is relatively rare and could always be birthed at an animal sanctuary. One of the maximum famous Jaglions lived in the Undergo Creek Sanctuary in Ontario, Canada, and could possibly live out their days there toting the road among lion and jaguar. However, their beginning became really a glad twist of fate. A black jaguar had mated with a lioness, and hence those twins were born, and their caretakers have said that those two are inseparable. It's noticeably unlikely that they could be standard by both species in the wild, and due to the fact they cannot breed with different species of their very own, they are basically one-of-a-kind creatures. But one component you cannot deny is they may be exceedingly excellent, taking over the excellent physical trends of each animal. However, if there's one lesson you could study from nature, it's that the greater lovely the animal, the possibilities are the deadlier its miles. Just ensure you do not turn your again on them, because it really is once they strike. Number 13. Groller Undergo. While you're tenting, the closing component you need to run into is a grizzly undergo. If considered one of this stuff takes a liking to you, matters probable may not pan out so well. So what would occur if this type of massive predators had their denims crossed with their polar cousins properly? Then you've got a Groller Bear in your palms. The name can be stupid, but the Groller Endure isn't to be trifled with, and not like preceding entries. Those are much more likely to show up inside the wild than in a zoo or sanctuary. Lower back. In 2006, an extraordinary-looking bear turned into shot in the Canadian Arctic, and after a few testing and lots of head-scratching, it was showed that this was in reality a hybrid animal. So how does something like this even occur? Don't grizzlies and polar bears have their personal respective territories? This one is a touch sadder, and it is possibly that these bears got here throughout every other due to weather change. As we all know, polar bears have been going for walks out of space in the Arctic regions, so that they've been shifting south into grizzly, and you could discern out the relaxation from there. However, on account that preliminary sighting, increasingly hunters are reporting roller bear sightings, and it is probable that there will be even more in the destiny. Number 12. Zonkey. A Zonkey is not a zombie donkey. However, the reality that this hybrid animal exists is creepy sufficient. Whilst you blend a zebra with a donkey, you get the strange cocktail that is the Zonkey, and due to the fact each animals are equine, breeding too efficaciously is pretty smooth to do. but the possibilities of a zebra and a donkey falling in love with every different in the wild are pretty low, so you can wager that any second life is a manufactured from both technology and selective breeding and fortuitously similar to its dad, and mom the Zonkey is something, however, lethal until killing any individual with cuteness is a component the Zonkey is able to maintain traits from both dad and mom that supplied its coat, and so they will usually have zebra traces on their legs. However, they'll nonetheless give you that iconic hee-haw. If you get a little too close, possibly they have got retained the first rate of each world's then, but the handiest trap with the Zonkey is that these guys are a one-time deal, meaning they cannot produce any young, making each new release one in all a kind, and in case you ever get all the way down to Tijuana and spot a completely striped Zonkey probabilities are it is only a donkey with the one's black and white stripes painted on. However, in case you need to seize a glimpse of this wild hybrid, your nice bet is going to be at a special zoo. Number 11. Humpless Camel. If you're lucky sufficient to peer a camel in character, or maybe experience one, the first issue you are going to be aware is the hump. But what about humpless camels, also referred to as Camus humpless camels, are the made from a camel breeding with a llama, and at the same time as you could no longer comprehend it, llamas and camels aren't that too far from every difference within the gene pool, so this hybrid animal isn't always as rare or hard to create. This is an interesting animal, because even as it can seem like a small camel, you will straight away be aware the hump is lacking. However, they do take at the llama's coat, which means they are greater soft, whilst not as big as a camel, and person, can weigh up to 6 instances as a whole lot. Number 9. Henny. In case you idea the Zonkey became one freaky hybrid animal, then just wait till you hear approximately this one. The Henny is a product of a suit made anywhere but heaven, a woman donkey mating with a male horse, and so the Henny is basically the alternative of a mule and looks a lot smaller than its 9F3 374 50 80 89 date 1F 10,256 5 cousin. However, in place of being a smaller, more demure hybrid animal, this one is strong, truly sturdy. Henny have a few difficult legs, so notwithstanding their length, they can come up with only a little more bang on your greenback than the average percent animal. It is pretty an interesting feature, and not like the mule, the Henny is a touch less difficult at the eyes, with a greater and typical better looking mane, so the Henny has beauty and brawn. But how approximately brains properly, maybe now, not a lot. It is able to no longer be the sharpest tool in the shed. However, they really know a way to get the activity executed. The most important query here is, why do you get a mule while you go a male donkey with a female horse, however a Henny, when you have the inverse pair? All of it comes down to the dominant tendencies of the mother. So due to the fact that Henny's mother is a lot smaller than the pony that sired it, you get this small in stature hybrid animal. Number 8. The Zoo. Positive lots of hybrid animals are the goods of lab creations and the need for more modern zoo sites. But then there are the ones that are created from necessity, and that's exactly what the Zog is what you get while you mix a yak with a home cow, and it is easily one of the most beneficial hybrids across the Zoo. Has end up all of the rage amongst farmers within the hills of Mongolia and Tibet, as they make now not most effective super beasts of burden. However, they also end up a chunk of a delicacy, supplying the great of each worlds on the subject of the meat. But what genuinely makes the zoo so special is its sheer size, because neither a cattle nor a yak can obtain that length clearly. And fun little truth approximately this zoo is that women are all fertile and capable of further producing offspring. However, when it comes to the men, they may be a one-time deal. The male zoo is definitely infertile, so you better revel in those genes, even as you could. The zoo is a notable instance of what and creativity of regular folks in preference to women and men in lab coats, cooking up Frankenstein monsters for research purposes. Number 7. Spider goats. You've heard of Spider-Man, however, but approximately spider goats are very real and a brand new addition into the arena of residing oddities, created via technological know-how. However, as opposed to swinging from building to constructing and saving a city as soon as per week, some of these goats do is produce milk that includes spider silk. However, due to the fact these goats have had their dinner spliced with the golden orb spider, the silk from the milk may be extracted and used to make all sorts of amazingly sturdy, like parachutes fishing strains, and even body armor. These spider goats are completely extraordinary and seriously uncommon, but do not expect to discover silk milk at the shelves of your nearby grocery save each time soon, because they're strictly bred and farmed for technology. And in case you don't believe me, simply attain out to the College of Utah, and they'd be satisfied to expose off these terrific spider goats on certainly one of their many guided excursions, and usually simply remember the fact that with extremely good strength comes first-rate duty even for goats. Number 6. Wolfen. Alright, this next access of wacky hybrids might be one of the rarest in the world that is pronouncing loads, and likely one of the coolest too. The Wolfen is what you get while you cross a woman bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale, which is surely a member of the dolphin family, and not an actual killer whale. Simply consider what that could seem like. However, the Wolfen is a top-notch cool hybrid that does in fact exist inside the wild, and an increasing number of human beings them, even though it's nonetheless a long way and few between. However, of path, this is the sort of animal which you'd ordinarily discover in captivity, with the first being produced in Tokyo Sea International in 1981, who unluckily died after just 200 days. The primary wolf in the USA changed into birthed at the Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985, named Kikaimalu because of this from the peaceful ocean, and she turned into a success from the instant she became born, and it's now not difficult to look why, with her darker pores and skin-fine row of 66 razor-sharp pearly whites that she indicates off with every extensive smile. She turned into even capable of produce offspring, which lamentably exceeded away after only a few days. However, her second calf lives a much greater a success lifestyles, presiding to be approximately 9 years vintage. It is safe to say that the Wolfen still needs some genetic best tuning to grow to be a mainstay within the animal kingdom. Number 5. Jeep. No longer to be confused with the four-wheel Grand Cherokee, the Jeep is a humorous little hybrid animal made when a sheep and a goat correctly procreate, but that pairing does not usually work out, and plenty of geeks are by no means carried to term and come out as stillborn. So like a few previous list entries, the Jeep is an extraordinary locate, so in case you do manipulate to trap a glimpse of one bear, in mind yourself to be tremendously fortunate, due to the fact those little guys are adorable as hell. The first actual case on record of any such little hybrid toddlers being born dates back to the 12 months 2000, when a male sheep impregnated a girl goat on the Botswana Ministry of Agriculture. The baby Jeep became born with a coarser outer coat and delightful woolly inner coat, and it came with the legs of a sheep and the frame of a goat. It sounds a piece like a mythological creature, but a lot to the chagrin of the caretakers, it became absolutely actual. Regrettably, although like many hybrid animals, the Jeep is infertile, so the concept of a whole flock of Jeep strolling around inside the meadow is only a pipe dream. But at the same time, as he could not create any offspring, the Jeep in Botswana could cross for something that moved chasing after every girl sheep. Number 4. Inexperienced Sea Slug. Claiming the range 4 spot in this list of hybrid animals is probably the maximum uncommon, but it is none apart from the inexperienced sea slug. This slug is a strange little beast incorporating the genetic fabric from the algae that it eats into its personal dinner. So talk approximately, you are what you devour. It's one of the few animals on this planet with this characteristic, and floats about in the oceans looking like a large green plant. However, because the slug feeds on flowers, it uses photosynthesis to create its very own nutrients as well. That is what offers it its vivid green color. Scientists have even referred to as it the emerald green Alicia. So in preference to being the product of 2 different animals, the green sea slug is made of the entirety. Anywhere suddenly, it's quite loopy. And it's still baffling scientists round the arena. Studies is still underway as to how the green sea slug is capable of do what it does. And as of but this super slug is the simplest a hit example of gene transfer from one kind of complex organism into some other. You will normally discover these men striking out in the shallows of tidal or salt marshes and creeks. So the following time you are hanging round in those areas and spot some brilliant green leaves floating approximately in the water, there's a risk that it's sincerely a green sea slug hiding in plain sight. Number 3. Tagan. Very just like the Liger, the Tidgeon has the same mother and father, best this time the roles are reversed. The Tidgeon is the epic offspring of a male tiger and a female lion or lioness. However, it's miles fantastic how, in spite of having such comparable parentage, the Tidgeon appears so distinctive from its gender-swapped counterparts. Those hybrid animals are genuinely gorgeous with their light tan stripes and a pleasant white underbelly, all topped off with a huge mane and spotted head. And as you can likely wager through now, there may be no way that a tiger and lion are mating inside. The wild tigers are especially solitary, but their domain names spanning for miles and miles, and lions particularly sticking to their delight on the off risk that these animals got here throughout each different inside the wild. The percentages are it wouldn't end properly, so the taken is best ever going to be discovered in captivity, and there is no manner those hybrids ought to ever be released into the wild, because they would, alas, in no way be common via either species, not which includes the existence of a hybrid animal. I assume the Tidgeon's record dates all the way again to 1943, whilst one become correctly birthed on the Munich Hellebrunn Zoo, and even raised to maturity. And even as there have been just a handful of exceptions, the majority of the tigers you may come upon at your local zoo are sterile, meaning each one is both the first and last in their own family. Number 2. A weapon. Ligers and tie guns and Groller Bears, oh my, and in case you concept those were freaky hybrids, then just wait until you spot this one. Whilst a male leopard efficaciously buddies with a girl lion, you get the weapon. These hybrids are animals which might be rare, with only a handful ever to exist, all of whom have been bred in captivity. The leopard has both a completely unique and beautiful appearance, and seems like something Hercules got here throughout during his 12 labors. The leopard has the head of a lion, a lovely mane, deadly jaws and all, but with the noticed frame of the leopard. If this factor ever got out into the wild, there may be absolute confidence that it might be the apex predator, and sincerely dominate the jungles and savannas of the sector, because it blends into its surroundings, stalking its prey, however fortuitously. For us, that is by no means going to happen. The sector's very first weapon, changed into bred in India at the turn of the 20th century, and now extra than 100 years later. It is believed that there are simplest about 100 in life. These days, the minute this type of leopards are born, they enter the endangered species, listing it as one unusual yet beautiful lifestyles. Number 1. Killer bees. We will guess you didn't recognize that killer bees are certainly hybrid animals. That is proper. These scary little fuzzy buzzing creatures are simply the mate from human interference created back inside the 1950s. Scientists had been placing their heads collectively with the aim of growing the arena's honey production. In order that they bred some different species of bee, they took the typical honey bee and combined them up with the African bee in a lab in Brazil. The result turned into a massive bee with an unpleasant mindset that had become presupposed to live out its days in a controlled surroundings too horrific for the scientists, even though, and the relaxation of the arena, that those new hybrid bees broke unfastened, and not like so many hybrid animals, the killer bee is very, very capable of producing no longer simply honey. However, offspring, their defining characteristic is their sturdy will to that you want to persuade clean of in any respect. Costs. Watch our animals playlist for extra top 15 movies approximately animals. Sit again, loosen up, and binge watch all of our first-rate animal associated films.